All right, everybody, welcome in to the Sideline Fantasy Show. We are here to preview just a couple playoff matchups. We have kind of take a look at the whole how the regular season shook out. I'm your host E Rock, joined by my host Kermie Charles, and hey, at least one of us made the playoffs, huh?
Yeah, it'd be kind of a crappy show to do if neither one of us made the
Yeah,
playoffs, and you kind of just had to look at matchups that didn't really matter necessarily to us. But at least one of us is in it. We'll crown a new champion potentially. We'll find out this week with Rob having to play. So, our league history got updated the other day, so I went and checked that. It was kind of upsetting actually to see just two different photos up there in league champions. So I really hope we get a third one, and hopefully, it may be me, somebody else, but I just something different would be kind of nice.
yeah. I mean, it would be interesting. We'll see. We'll see if Rob can hold the VIP club for us for there. Um, and that's actually where we're going to start. Let's take a look at the league history real quick, just to kind of give a little length to the show. Um, I got it up for me here. My bad. I probably should have given it to you beforehand, but yeah. Just if you just want to have, yeah, that works.
Yeah, I'm on the screen. So as long as it gives me everything that I can see, then we're good.
Yeah, I'm talking about like the records,
Okay,
NFL
yeah,
Fantasy Sideline League history. So for the 6-year teams, you have me at 43 and 37 with 4 playoff appearances. Trey almost got his first playoff appearance, couldn't get it. He's 34 and 46. You're 42 and 38. Dana, we talked about this the other day. It's kind of crazy that Dana's got one more regular season win than you, and he's made the playoffs 4 less times. What do you think about that?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's weird to look at. It just kind of goes to show that whatever division Dana's been in has predominantly been one of the ones that is tougher to get into.
And also
Um,
another thing to factor in is he did go like 12 and 1 year, which obviously
yeah,
boosts. And you've always been very like 500y, a little bit above, sometimes below.
yeah. I don't think
Mostly
I've ever
above. I
had
mean,
a year that was
I
it
mean,
was
it's a
pretty up
power to you. You've made the playoffs 5 times out of 6 years, but it is kind of crazy that Dana's got one more
there.
win with.
I mean, even then, like to have five shots at it, win 3 games, lose 4. I mean, when I get there, I seem to fall short fairly often. So, it's just crazy to look at something like that. I mean, someone again like a Trey who's been in all 6 years, and it's something that may kind of die on this hill here because he said the other day, I don't know if I want to play fantasy football anymore. It's just gambling. These players I can't
Right.
control anything like that. I'm like, well, you can in a way. Obviously, nobody has full control over how these players play, but um,
There's always a little bit of skill. Or I know it's just I don't know if those skills the right word, but I mean, I do think there is some skill in fantasy, but there also is a lot of
oh
luck. I mean,
yeah,
you need luck, but I mean, you need luck in real sports too, obviously. But there is, I think, a factor of strategy and skill, although it might be not as large as actually, obviously, playing the sport. But
yeah, I'd agree. I mean, we don't do this for no reason. Obviously, like there are systems people have. I think it all starts with the draft, and that's mainly where I think the biggest test of skill is, just because
oh, for
you're
sure,
relying on yourself, obviously, to kind of predict how these players are going to play. But as the year goes on, and just having the ability to adjust and kind of sniff out those guys that people don't really necessarily think are going to be studs. And obviously, we don't have all the information either at the beginning of the year. So as the year goes on, we get more information on guys like a Claypool or how Jerry Judy kind of is underperforming. We don't know these things. We kind of have expectations at the beginning of the year. We take that into the draft, and that's where the skill kind of lays, is where you're picking up these players, you're dropping certain guys, you're really making moves that you think are for the best, and obviously you're putting out the best lineup you can, or what you think is going to be the best lineup you can every week. So yeah, there's luck for sure, but at the same time, there's still mental skill there for sure too.
yeah, and and again, it's pretty crazy. Dave, going looking at him, he's 45 and 35. He has the most wins out of anybody in the league, and he has made the playoffs 4 times, but he's 0 and 4 in the playoffs. And not only that, not only does he still have the most wins in the league, he hasn't made the playoffs both of the last 2 years. He actually made the playoffs the first 4 years and hasn't made it either of the last two. So riding a little bit of a cold streak. He was happy to be above 500 this year after everything that shook out. He retains his most regular season win crown. Chad, 42 and 38. He made the playoffs as well. So both you and Chad got another tick to your record there. But again, he's never won in the playoffs. You actually have the third most playoff wins in the league. He has not won in the playoffs either. He's kind of right in the same spot as Dave, and he's looking for his first win to get his monkey off his back. Another person that was able to chalk another playoff appearance up was Rob. He's a 5-year team. This is his 5th year in the league. He's 40-26. Very solid record. The only time he did not make the playoffs was last year. So he's made it 4 out of 5 years. He's 5-1 in the playoffs. Second best record to me. He actually has a chance to pass that record. He could go to 8-1 with three rings with a win here. If he does that, what do you think? You think he's got a shot, Krim? He could potentially three rings, best playoff record in the league.
I mean, I obviously, part of me wants to sit here and say absolutely not, just because I'm a part of this. But any team right now has a shot, man. Like, and we'll go over that more so when we get into the matchups. But it's just crazy to look at these two top, the guys who have won every year. So obviously you guys can see it on your screen here, Eric and Rob. I mean, obviously when you're winning championships, you're going to have, a good amount of playoff wins. But Rob's 2 rings winning 5 games, I mean, that means, one of the times he didn't have a bye. So there's been times where you guys wouldn't have finished atop your division for sure. I mean, the first year of the league, we saw a 6-8 team somehow, some way squeak their way into the playoffs, which again almost saw out this year, actually in Division 1, if things could have kind of fallen into place. But having a 6-8 team go in there and win that championship just goes to show that your team may not perform during the regular season, but as long as you get in, you've always got a shot.
Yeah, for sure, no doubt about it. And we'll see if someone can take one of those. We'll see if we'll have a third guy in the Champions Club. Like I said, I've got 3. Rob's got 2. This is year 6. We'll see what happens there. Rob, again, getting his 4th playoff appearance in 5 years. Good job there. Peter, 4-year teams. Kyle and Peter entered the league the same year. Kind of throw them in as a tandem there. That was a good year when we picked those 2 up. Peter, 24-28. 2 good years, one really good year. This year was a good year, and 2 pretty bad years from Peter. So far, he's 2 for 4, 2 playoff appearances in 4 years, a little bit of an under 500 record, 1-1 in his first playoff appearance. This is his second. And then you have Kyle, and I mean, what can you say about Kyle? He's made the playoffs every year. He's 35-17. He's got 35 wins in 4 years, okay? Dave has the most wins in the league in 6 years with 45. Kyle's only 10 wins away from that in 2 years span that he's got to do that in. He's got the best winning percentage in the entire league. He's made the playoffs every single year, but he can't get it done in the playoffs. 1-3 so far in 3 appearances. This is going to be his 4th appearance. So already we're at a lot of playoff teams. Kyle got another notch. Peter got another notch on his belt. What do you think about Peter and Kyle?
I mean, obviously we've seen consistency. When you see Peter, making the playoffs twice, I believe in 4 years, you said, so that's pretty stout. But Kyle making it every year, that's pretty impressive. I'll give it to him on that regard. I mean, making the playoffs in its own right is difficult when it comes down to it, but making it every year since you've been in the league is an impressive feat on its own. But like you said, he hasn't gotten it done yet. I mean, obviously, we look at his team, and again, we'll go over it in more detail shortly, but we've said all year his team is probably one of the best teams, if not the best team in the league. So is this kind of a year where he gets it done? Or is something like Kyle's playoff record going to come and bite him in the butt here with Chad somehow, some way, finding some life and defeating him this week? I mean, we'll see. It's gonna be a fun ride for sure, but I mean, you would think that Kyle would kind of want to get that monkey off his back and be able to actually do some damage in the playoffs.
For sure, yeah, and this is going to be his 4th playoff appearance. We'll see if he can get it done. And like I said, 35-17 in 4 years. That's almost averaging, and they've been in the league. The reason some records are a little different is because the first 2 years, obviously, we did 14-game seasons. But they've 13-game seasons. That's almost 9 wins a year. That's good. 35 wins in 4 years. That's almost a 9-4 team every single year. 3-year teams, Jay, 12-27. There was a time his team looked pretty solid, kind of fell off. Hopefully he can pull it together next year, looking for his playoff appearance. Tyler, 2-year teams, 14-12. He's been in the league 2 years now. Went 6-7 last year. Did decent. 9-4. Or sorry, yeah. 8-5 this year, right? Yeah, it ended up being 8-5 with a playoff appearance. He gets his first one. Justin, newcomer this year, welcome addition to the league, 7-6. Didn't quite get in, was very, very close, but also a good addition there as well. Yeah, So I always have fun keeping track of league history, just keeping track of records, playoff appearances, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of fun to keep track of that stuff. So it's always cool to look back on. But yeah, let's talk about 2020, Krim. Let's talk about the 2020 fantasy football season. The playoffs are set. There were some crazy matchups last week. You ended up losing, still getting the bye last week, and it looked like you were going to win the whole entire week, and your team really just threw up a dud. And to be honest, your team's thrown up a few duds here in these last few weeks, and when we get to your matchup, it's got to get you a little nervous for that. Peter ended up beating Trey by a single point, 117-64 to 118-68. That literally was an elimination game. Winner went to the playoffs, loser did not get in. What an insane game. And Darren Waller getting 38, Taysom Hill 23, Aaron Jones 22. I mean, Trey did everything he could to get in. His defense got him 14. His kicker got him 16, but it wasn't enough.
No, and it sucks too because he was actually asleep during that game, so he had no idea what was going on. I'm assuming he went to bed, not very, in a good spirits, assuming because he had Diggs to go up against that in that last game. But Diggs did just enough to push Peter over the hump, and that kind of obviously that sucks. But at the same time, that's kind of what this is built for, is the moments you kind of want to see play out and see how things work out.
And Chad really needed to win too. I've been kind of talking the last almost month that Chad was probably going to lose every remaining game, and he only put up 87 points last week. He pretty much should have lost last week, but he was going against you, who had the least amount of points in the league last week. He got the win, secured his spot. If he would have lost, that would have made it really interesting, for sure. I don't think he would have gotten in if I'm not mistaken. And then Rob got in, beating. Or Rob was already in, but he comes in really hot in the playoffs. He's going to be riding a big win streak here with another big performance. And in another elimination game, Kyle versus Justin, we kind of saw how that one was going to play out. Kyle, I think this is no questions anymore, has the best team in the league. He's going to be entering the playoffs off a 151-point performance last week to get in the playoffs as well. So let's take a look at this week's matchups, Krim, the two playoff matchups. Let's get at it. Let's get down to what matters the most here. The first one is Kyle versus Chad. Kyle coming in at 8-5, Chad coming in at 7-6. Divisions do not matter anymore. Chad had 20 points, a big 20-point performance from Cam Akers. I'm sure that's more than he wanted, and he got it. And he is still projected to lose to Kyle, who's projected for an absurd 120. I know who most people are rooting for. They're rooting for Chad's kind of limp into the playoffs team to get the job done here. Going against Kyle's behemoth of a roster. This has huge implications, not only for this week, for the personal players of Chad and Kyle, but if Kyle loses, this thing's wide open, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, taking a stance on someone in the playoffs and kind of awaiting my opponent with that thankful bye I got last week. I don't want to play a team like Kyle's. I don't want to have to go into the playoffs against, these guys. So I'm hoping that some of them kind of falter. I mean, he's got good matchups for some of them. Excuse me. He's got Tennessee, James Robinson, Devontae Adams against the Lions. I mean, Tyreek Hill against anybody is always good. So those guys are pretty massive to his success for his team this year. But at the same time, too, I mean, some of Chad's guys have good ones as well. I mean, Ronald Jones playing Minnesota. I think that if that team gets up, they'll use him a lot more, and he can kind of rip off, another 92-yard run and show the Ronald Jones of, I believe, week like 7 or 8 or whatever it was that he did it, and kind of carry Chad's running back, to a massive week, which I think he really needs. So Chad's team, all in all, I mean, doesn't look awful on paper. I mean, you've got Big Ben closing it out. You'll know by the end of the 4:00 games, thankfully for Chad, what you need to do. And Chad has a quarterback closing it out, so that's always key. But
yeah, he's got the last guy going tonight. Well, yeah, we'll know by the end of tonight how this matchup goes. Yeah.
So I mean, we'll be able to kind of take that in and see what's good with it. But I think Chad, even as early, or I guess as late as yesterday, with that Myles Gaskin news, made a decent play with picking up DeAndre Washington. I know that any running back in Miami isn't necessarily always going to be good, but I saw what Sullivan Allman did in absence of Gaskin. I think that this is a decent play, especially with Chad not having the best of options on his bench. DJ Moore being out and whatnot. So I think Chad. I mean, obviously the projections say Kyle's going to win. We would sit there and and say until we're blue in the face, we think Kyle has a really really good shot at winning the whole thing. But I think Chad with the right obviously games, as anybody can say any week, but
That's
he's
the
got
beauty about it. Yeah.
he's got good matchups. I mean, I don't really see anything here that I'm scared of. I mean, even Goddard, has been fine with Jalen Hurts, but with the last week, but he can kind of swap him out for Logan Thomas, and last week Logan Thomas was very good. So, Chad's team, although it said it's projected to only score, I believe, 108 points,
which isn't too shabby. It's not bad.
That's a good week. So that's a week that amount of points you think would win you a week, but unfortunately you're in the Kyle's team where I can see on Kyle's side of things. I mean, some things may not work out. I mean, like playing Stafford, that could cost you.
His quarterback carousel there, and I'm assuming he thinks Green Bay is going to get a big lead and Stafford's going to have to throw 50 times, and that could be possible. And that's why I think Devontae Adams against Detroit, Green Bay might put up 40 plus, and Devontae has been obviously a great play this week. I mean, I think he's got some good Chris Carson against the Jets. I think Kyle's got some good matchups. I don't know.
It's tough to pick against him for sure. I mean, he's got very good matchups, but at the same time, I think Chad had decent ones too. So I mean, if you're Chad, you're hoping that some of these guys kind of have a quieter game for sure. I think the key thing with Kyle, outside of Stafford, I think maybe the play of Alvin Kamara against that Philly defense. I mean, that defense hasn't been bad by any means. It's just a matter of if this game ends up being a Miles Sanders game because he's been playing pretty poorly the last couple of weeks, and they kind of let him just kind of take reins of that and run the ball for the majority of the game, keep them off the field. If Kamara can get capped and Stafford can kind of do what you think he may do, there's room for error there, and that's the room that Chad needs.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Like I said, Chad looking for his first playoff win. Kyle making the playoffs every single year, but has not gotten the job done yet. It's going to be a fun one. Two veterans going at it, a 4-year team versus a 6-year team here. Both really wanting it, I can tell. Next up is Rob versus Peter in the other playoff matchup this week. Obviously, you and Tyler got the buys in the divisions. You guys are the division winners. Rob projected for 113. His team is coming on a 3-game win streak right at the right time. Peter, on the other hand, was 5-6. Wasn't looking like he had much of a shot, especially with me having the tiebreak over him, but he did exactly what he needed to do, controlled his own destiny. He's projected for 108. Rob, obviously the 2-time champ. Peter, this is his 2nd time in the postseason. Again, 2 veterans, a 5th-year guy and a 4th-year guy going at it this year. What do you think about this one?
It's close. I mean, obviously, projection-wise shows that it's a 5-point game. I think both teams have their strengths, but also their weaknesses. I mean, something that Rob has lacked all year long has been an RB2. I mean, he's had Dalvin Cook, which can kind of make up for not having an RB2, but just to think that how much more of a well-rounded team this would be if Rob were to have an RB2 and maybe move to Kelsey earlier in the year. I mean, that this team could be looking a lot more like Kyle's, I feel, in that regard, just because the RB2 lacks, and same with his receivers. I mean, he's got guys in good matchups. He's been kind of riding that Deontay Johnson train. It's been working out for him for the most part. But, I mean, you've got Corey Davis against Jacksonville. I think that's somebody who has been very hit or miss. I mean, he's either going to give you 25, 30, or he's going to go out there and give you 5. So to rely on something like that, in a playoff matchup, obviously it's a good matchup, so you're going to do it, but it's not ideal by any means. I mean, these teams both have, like I said, glaring weaknesses, but at the same time, they kind of offset each other. I mean, Rob has a better quarterback, I would say. Brady's been playing fine football, but I wouldn't say he has the upside of a Wilson. Peter has an RB2 in Sanders, which is obviously more of a steady play than a Ty Johnson. And the receivers, I mean, Peter has those, but tight end, looking at Peter's team even closer, his team is very well rounded. So I think that Peter's team.
That's what I'm saying. I think if I'm Rob, or if you're Rob, you're the highest scoring team in the league, right? You're upset if you don't go far in the postseason, right? I mean, it's fantasy. Anything can happen. You could throw up a dud, but if you have a team, you always have those years where you have a good team and you get beat, and you're like, man, this team was supposed to win it. If Rob loses, he's the highest scoring team in the league. That's upsetting. Dalvin Cook, Travis Kelsey, all that type of stuff. But I'm upset if I'm Peter and I lose. Tom Brady, quarterback 9. Aaron Jones, running back 5. Miles Sanders with injuries, running back 29. But when he's played, outside of a couple weeks, pretty good. I know he's been a little bit shaky lately, but again, let's keep rolling off here. Amari Cooper, wide receiver 13. McLaurin, wide receiver 15. Waller, tight end number 2. Diggs, receiver number 5. Everywhere you look, he's top 10, top 15 at every position. I think Peter's one of the most well-rounded teams in the league, but Rob's got the Dalvin Cook, he's got Russell Wilson, and he's got Travis Kelsey, and that 3 combo has won him plenty of weeks this year. But if I'm Peter, man, with how well-rounded his team is, I know he's only 7-6, but it would both teams are going to be heartbroken, I think, if they lose.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that I'm not sitting there picking matchups, but I feel like Peter has the advantage in this matchup just because Rob's running into a tough Tampa Bay defense with Dalvin playing today. And I mean, that's not always a defense you can kind of just run on. And if that team gets down with their defense being lackluster, it's going to help Peter. He's going to have Brady. Brady's going to be throwing the ball quite a bit. And
38 touches for Cook last week, too. 38. You just don't see that anymore.
No, and that's crazy, too, coming off of a week where I believe Mike Zimmer said he looked like he was beaten up.
Yeah.
And Dalvin said, no, I'm not. I'm going to go out there and run. But can you really have Dalvin Cook go out there and run into a brick wall 38 times this week against a better run defense? I don't think you can.
And what's fun, too, is, again, because me and Trey were knocked out, me and Trey had most of the Browns and Ravens players here, or they're on buys. So there is no Monday Night Football. Both of the playoff matches will be decided tonight. In fact, this game has Deontay Johnson and the Steelers defense for Rob going up against Stephon Diggs. So you'd have to think Peter would want to be entering that game with some type of lead, because you'd want at least a decent lead, I would say, because Deontay Johnson's been a receiver 25. That Steelers defense could get around 9 or 10. They're the number 1 fantasy defense. They could get more, although I do think Buffalo will beat them this week, but we'll see. But yeah, it's going to be a fun matchup. Both of them will be decided by tonight. You guys will know your playoff opponents coming up, so you and Tyler, it'll be a fun one, even though you're kind of sitting back watching.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I have my preferences. I would rather have
spill of the beans. Who do you want to play?
I mean, obviously I want to play Chad's team. I mean, I would hope that Chad stuns Kyle and I get to play Chad, but I don't think that will happen. I believe whatever happens.
There's another shot at you, Chad. I know you listen to this. Chad, he's calling you out. He wants you.
He
wants you.
I want a rematch. I want to, be able to redeem myself from last week and do what needs to be done. But I know who I'll play come the end of the day. I mean, it's going to be, if Kyle wins, I play Kyle. If Rob wins, I play Rob. I'm going to play.
Here's the great thing about Chad, too, is his team has largely kind of been not shit talked. He's been in the top of the division, but people have kind of made fun of it for that. Like, hey, your team's not that good. He's the 5th highest scoring team in the division, or 4th. And he got in as that second player, almost got the 1 seed. But here's the thing. He has a chance to shut everyone up this week by winning a playoff game and doing it against the best team in the league. So all props to Chad. I know you listen to this. Go and prove the doubters wrong. Get it done. And then you get to prove another doubter wrong and play Crimmy. Get it done, buddy. Get it done.
I mean, I hope that's not the case. I really do hope that Chad wins. I see an avenue where that happens. It's coming down to those running backs necessarily, but again, Chad's team, it's scary because although I do want to play his team, it's his team can kind of be falling into a spot where, yeah, you lost Mixon, but you picked up Akers in the perfect time. I mean, he's becoming the starter. You're winding down the season. The Rams are winning, trying to lock a division up. What are you going to do? Normally, when you're getting to this point in the year, you're going to run the ball. You're going to protect those guys from getting hurt in regards to your receivers and quarterback. So Akers' production and his opportunities are only going to get higher, I think. So Chad's team could be rounding out very well with his running backs, just with Akers just kind of joining the fold there. But at the same time, too, I don't trust the rest of his squad. I mean, if anybody goes down this week, if anybody gets, for some reason tweaks anything and can't play, his depth is not great. So that's kind of why I would kind of pick on Chad's team a bit because someone like a Kyle or a Peter has the depth. Rob and Chad necessarily don't. So I'd rather see those two teams just because of that factor right there. But any team here has players. Any team here is going to be, a tough opponent. But obviously, we have our preferences in regards to who we want to see next week.
Should be a fun one. Good luck to all the players that made the playoffs this year. Tyler being kind of the lone representatives of people who haven't been here that long. Everyone else, Rob, you, Chad, Peter, Kyle, have all been around a while. So Tyler's going to try to represent for the young kids in the league. Good luck to everybody. Thanks again for another great season. 6th year. Can't wait to keep going with this. It's been fun. Talk to you guys next week when the playoff matchups get even juicier. See ya.